fascinated by the story. And also, surprisingly, in one of his biography, it's explained that Professor Robert Frager has black belt on Aikido. He is very cool, right? And today, he will share with us his idea entitled Spirituality and Meditation in Transpersonal Counseling. I can see that Professor Frager is already in the Zoom. Good evening, Professor Frager.
Assalamu alaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
And
Pardon, can you hear my voice well?
Excuse me?
Yeah, can you hear my voice clearly?
Not well. Can you turn up sound, or we'll turn up the sound a little bit?
Okay, but I can hear your voice clearly. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, are you ready for your speech?
No.
No. Okay.
If I was ready, it means I've already practiced.
Okay.
So what is on my mind, which will be more interesting, inshallah.
Okay. Okay.
You're talking to the Sufi Sheikh. I'm not here as a psychologist.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you expect I'm not going to do it?
Yeah.
Shall we go on, and shall I get to my speech?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Please welcome.
First part is about Islamic meditation and their use in spiritual counseling. Number one, Islamic meditation has the purpose of awareness of Allah, not being calm, not reducing your blood pressure, not seeing the world clearly. Who the hell wants to see the world clearly? Does that bring you closer to Allah? No. Does it reduce your ego, your nafs? No. How many people sit and try to be calm and just hide their arrogance and hide their narcissism? So no, I'm completely against focusing on mindfulness as some sort of mental health exercise. We've been doing mindfulness from the history of Islam on to today. First, basic practice of mindfulness is to read the Quran al-Karim, to read deeply, to reflect deeply on Allah's words, because we all know that the Quran al-Karim consists of Allah's infinite wisdom. Every word in the Quran is infinite in a sense, in depths. So not to use the Quran, not to focus on Allah's words is a huge mistake. So that's the beginning, to really learn what the Quran says, to let it permeate you, to let it permeate your heart, to let it permeate your life. Skim the Quran and look for those ayats that jump out at you, that have meaning and heart for you. Write them down, memorize them, contemplate them, and stay with it so that you come to understand them in a whole different level of depth. Typically, people say, oh, there are 7 levels of meaning to the Quran al-Karim. Of course, they say that, but they don't know what those levels are. Someone came to my old sheikh and asked that question. He said, 7 levels? There are 70,000 levels to every ayat in the Quran al-Karim. That's the depth of our Holy Quran. So let's not try to imitate other religions or people that forget the roots of their spiritual practice. The roots of the practice of meditation in Buddhism are very deep, but it's not about lowering your blood pressure. It's about becoming more of an aware human being, aware of what's in you. So that's number one. Number two, silent meditation. This has been with us from the beginning. After Salat, for example, I advise people to sit still, feel themselves in Allah's presence. That's meditation. And you can extend that time with practice. The founder of my order used to say, Make a 40-day retreat. Don't busy yourself with reciting the Quran or doing other reading. Just sit in Allah's presence for 40 days. The problem is we can't do it. But in the old days, that was a retreat. It's possible to sit in Allah's presence. You just have to work at it. Compare that to just sitting calm and watching your breath. Watching your breath will not reduce your ego. Watching your breath will not bring you closer to Allah Ta'ala. Third, active meditation. We've been doing active meditation from the beginning. We call it dua. You make dua for other people. You make dua for the sake of the world, for world peace. You make dua that people can heal from the illnesses they're suffering. That's meditation. And that's meditation with compassion. That's meditation with caring. And if you keep praying for others, your heart will expand, not your awareness, whatever that means when people say mindfulness. By the way, I practiced mindful meditation in Buddhism for years, so it's not that I'm against it. I'm just against the way it's taught today with no roots and no understanding. I was at a wonderful Janaza prayer some years ago in Istanbul, and I was introduced to the Sheikh. He recited the Quran al-Karim with greater depth than I've ever heard before or since. So I paid attention. He had sat in every word of the Quran that he uttered. And I suddenly understood it in a way I'd never done that before. He said to me when he heard that I was a sheikh in California, as though that meant something, tell your people to make dua, he said. I would say dua is even more important than salat, but he said I can't because the Sharia says salat is more important, but make dua because it gives you a special relationship with Allah. It opens your heart. It gives you a special relationship with the people that you're praying for. So that's active meditation, praying for other people. 5, here's a goal: constant prayer, constant remembrance. In Arabic, it's salatu daim, zikr daim, constant zikr, constant prayer. In the hadith of Hazrat Jibreel alayhi salam, he came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He asked him several questions. The last one was, what is Ihsan? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Ihsan is to worship Allah as if you see him. For though you do not see Allah, Allah certainly sees you. So that's the beginning of zikr daim, salatu daim, constant zikr, constant prayer. In fact, my sheikh said, you know, people ask me, do you have to be a Muslim to be a dervish? And he said, well, I say yes, but not in a way that you think. And what he said was not 5 prayers a day, constant prayer. Not remembrance once or twice a week, constant remembrance. That's our goal. Our goal is not just to drop our blood pressure. I want to move on to the second main topic, which is the focus of love and Allah's presence in counseling. In Surah Al-Kahf, Allah teaches we are closer to humanity than their jugular veins. Remember that and teach your clients to work with this ayah. When they're depressed, you keep saying, Allah is closer to you than your jugular vein. Respect yourself more, trust yourself more, hold yourself with more dignity because Allah is in you. Allah is closer to you than you are to yourself. That's feeling alone in yourself. Some of you have read or studied Carl Rogers, who I had the pleasure of knowing before he passed. He was one of the greatest teachers of counseling and psychotherapy. And he taught over and over again the most important element in counseling and therapy is what? Love. Love your clients. Let them know that they're loved. And if you do it well enough, they'll come to love you and trust you. And then something will happen in the counseling session. Unconditional positive regard is simply academic nonsense for love. Love heals. To be loved creates a deep bond between the two who love each other, creates trust, and it opens the hearts of both. Let me quote a wonderful Irish priest who was also a spiritual counselor. His name is John O'Donoghue. He was a poet and an author. And he wrote about what's called in Celtic the Anam Cara. Anam Cara is literally soul friend, the friend of your soul, not the friend of your personality, not the friend of your bank account, the friend of your soul. And here's a quote from him. A person who acted as a teacher, companion, or spiritual guide was called a soul friend. It originally referred to someone to whom you confessed, revealing the hidden intimacies of your life, your mind, your heart. This friendship was an act of recognition and belonging. The soul is a divine light that flows into you and out to your other. The art of belonging awakened and fostered a deep and special companionship. The one you love, your soul friend, is the truest mirror to reflect your soul. Read O'Donoghue's book Anam Cara and practice it, because that's probably the most direct way to be a magnificent counselor. You have to share your soul with them. You have to open yourself to their soul. The soul is more an aura about the body. It's not a little point somewhere. So your aura merges with the aura of your clients and literally become one in a real spiritual sense. I want to remind all of you, I assume I'm speaking to my fellow Muslims primarily, how much did Rasulullah love his ummah? How much? Do you know what his last words were? When he was dying, Hazrat Ali radiallahu brought his ear close to Rasulullah's mouth. His mouth had become bluish. He only managed 3 last words. Ummati, ummati, ummati. My people, my community, my people. He thought of us with his last breath. Can we begin to think of others, each other, to love each other in the same way? It's simple. All we have to do is be less dominated by our narcissistic egos, teach ourselves to become real human beings. I do strongly suggest tasawwuf, because that's what worked for me. I've been teaching tasawwuf since 1985. I've made many, many mistakes, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. That's all I have to say. I'll take a question if we have 2 minutes left.
Okay.
We have 10 minutes left. I'll take 2 questions.
Okay. Okay, everybody. If you have any question or opinion, you can jump in by click the raise hand, or you can type on the chat room your question and opinion. Okay. Is there any question? While waiting question from participant, I am really wondering about your experience in helping a client or student maybe who has
In helping what?
Sorry?
Can you repeat it? My experience in helping what?
Helping the student who has lived complex trauma. It is my own passion.
Please repeat it again. Scream into the microphone because I'm old and my ears are even older.
Oh, so sorry. So I'm really wondering about your experience in supporting student or a client who has lived through complex childhood trauma in applying transpersonal counseling. Can you share with us, please?
Well, it reminds me of counseling by telephone, which I do sometimes. And I was talking with one of my dervishes who was living 1,000 miles away, and he was having trouble with his son. And we started talking about why he was having trouble with his son, the fact that he and his wife were undergoing a divorce, all the psychological and emotional issues, blah, blah, blah. And I suddenly stopped. And I said, this is going in the wrong direction to myself. And I looked at him and I said, okay, tell me, how would a real dervish behave in this situation? Cut out all the trivial, emotional, psychological rationale. And all of a sudden his eyes opened up and the whole conversation changed. And I found over and over again, when I say to people, behave, tell me how a real dervish would behave. Nobody says, I don't know, I've never met a real dervish. Because in us, we have that soul. In us is an inner dervish. And simply by asking, you can generally bring it forth. And it's amazing how relatively easy it is, because I believe it's in us. It's not hiding anywhere in, Burma or the Himalayas or wherever, or in Indonesia. It's in us. So let me give you a quick model of counseling. Counseling is not two people in a room facing each other, worrying about transference and countertransference, because all there is with two people in the room is sort of that. Transference is a client and a counselor and a third presence in the room above them both, Allah. Allah is present all the time. The job of the spiritual transpersonal guide is to remember their relationship with Allah. If they remember that, they can get their client to mirror that and have that experience for themselves. If you think you're doing it, then it's your ego. Your ego loves the idea that you're the healer, you're the wise one, you know best, because it's not true. Allah knows best. So put Allah in the room. Here's me, here's you, and Allah is present. And my job is not, yes, I want to pay attention to you, but not to the exclusion of paying attention to Allah. So sometimes I do that by saying, hey, how would a dervish behave? Because it's clear that a dervish sort of remembers Allah. So it's a whole different model for counseling. And by the way, it works incredibly well whenever I remember it, which is not always. Okay?
Yeah. Okay. That's very deep.
From several years of training, years of teaching spiritual counseling, years since 1985, I've been a Sufi sheikh, so I've practiced with my own dervishes. I've practiced with my graduate students in psychology, so I can tell you it works. It doesn't come from stupid ass books I read that says meditation will help lower your blood pressure. Because I haven't done that research. I don't believe it anyhow. And who cares if meditation will reduce your blood pressure if meditation doesn't bring you closer to Allah, closer to your soul, and doesn't teach you about the tricks of your ego? That's what, in a sense, spiritual counseling is: learning about the ego and beginning to struggle with it, and deepening your love of Allah and His beloved Mustafa Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's it.
Okay. Okay. Very great explanation. There is a question in the chat room from Putri Melinia. So, she needs your confirmation. The goals of Islamic meditation is get back or closer to Allah and reduce the ego or nafsu, isn't it, Professor Frager?
Can you?
The goal of Islamic spiritual counseling is to get closer to Allah Ta'ala and reduce your ego.
And
to reduce your ego. Is that right? Is that correct?
And the goal of spiritual counseling is to get closer to Allah, to remember Allah more, to feel Allah's presence within you and all around you. Doesn't mean to be one with Allah, because Rasulullah did that, nobody else, as far as I know. And to learn the tricks of your ego. Your ego is the world's greatest narcissist, even bigger than Trump. If you want to see narcissism in action, listen to any speech by Donald Trump. You'll see a man who's crazed. He's actually driven crazy by his need for approval, his need for seemingly power. And we all have an ego that would love to get there, the opposite direction of what we really want in our lives. So we have to educate ourselves about our nafs ammara, and also educate ourselves about the other 6 layers of the nafs, which is discussed in Tasawwuf. And if I had time, I would talk about all of them, but we're out. I do have a nice book that talks about them, however, called Heart, Self, and Soul, which many of you know. Many of you bought the Indonesian version. This is a pitch, by the way. I'm now selling books. But it's nice to know that we have a system that says the ego can be transformed and really tells us how to do it. Thank you all. Thank you, audience. It's been lovely to be present with you. Unfortunately, you're on an iPhone, so you're tiny little dots on the screen. But I love you all. I care for you all. I would love to see you again, maybe life-size. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Again, thank you so much.
The chat, because it's Mawlud on Nabi that we're celebrating next.
Oh.
That trumps conferences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Robert Frager, for your extensive explanation. And so it's insightful for me personally. And everybody,